Hello and thank you for watching. This is STSC back again with LEGO Transformers Seeker. Now this build isn't meant to represent a single character named Seeker. Obviously, in most Transformers continuities, Seeker is the name given to the flying Decepticons that are typically led by Starscream. Here I've decided to use the term as a replacement for Viacon, since I feel that name is a little too tied to the car alt mode. So yeah, this is just meant to be the expendable cannon fodder of the Decepticon army. To put it in pop culture terms, pretty much their stormtrooper. And I figured a drone would be pretty fitting, as it kind of represents the diminutive status they have as worker bees in the Decepticon ranks. And I am fairly happy with this mode. It might be a little bit boring in its monochromatic color scheme of pure black, but I think it's kind of fitting for a drone. He probably would be more accurate in light gray, but I just didn't have the pieces on hand for that color scheme, and that just would be, I feel, a little less appropriate for a Decepticon foot trooper, especially considering the Viacons that we have seen usually are black or purple. So I went for black. You'll notice here he has these tail fins, which are a little bit chunky. I was considering using the flag trapezoidal pieces for those wings, but I just opted to use these as they were just a little bit simpler, and I feel like they match the aesthetic of the rest of the jet, which is kind of blocky overall and a bit simplistic. Honestly, there's something about the more simplified aesthetic of this guy that kind of gives me IX Rollout IX vibes, but maybe that's just me. If you turn him over, you will unfortunately see a bit of an exposed head, which you can kind of try and fold up to be a little bit more tucked in, but it's kind of an unavoidability of jet transformers that you'll see something poking out the bottom, so I don't mind it too much, especially since he can kind of sit on it and it helps keep him balanced when he's on the ground. For size comparison, here we have the Seeker with a minifigure, and with his commander, Flyweight. And obviously they're way out of scale. A drone should not be this massive next to a real jet. And that's about all there is to say about this mode, so now it's time to transform. And here we have the Seeker in his robot mode. And to be honest, it's a pretty simple one. I think it's fitting for the character, or rather lack thereof, but I could definitely see this simplicity turning someone away from the design. I do rather enjoy his proportions. He has kind of a strong look to him, where he doesn't really look chunky or brutish, but the large arms and kind of thick legs give him this powerful look, which combined with the hunch he has really makes him look appropriately Decepticon, in my opinion. The head is the only place on the mock where I've added some color. I went for the red visor and the gray faceplate to reference the Transformers Prime Viacons. However, I didn't make the top of the head light gray because I felt it would have made it stick out a little bit too much from the rest of the mock. As is, I think it strikes a decent balance. For articulation, you can bring his head up and down, and he's got a universal joint at the shoulders and a hinge at the elbow that can afford a little over a 90. Then he has an ab crunch, which can be a bit tight, and he has outward joints at the hips as well as sort of forward, but it is kind of awkward because it moves under the outward joint, so if you kind of kick it forward like this, you can see it looks a bit weird. For size comparison, here we have the Seeker with a minifigure, and with his commander, Flyweight. And that's about all I have to say about this build. Yes, it's a pretty simple one, but that's by intention, since I wanted him to be a massive grunt. And I didn't want him to be too visually distinct. So maybe one of these days I could build a couple more of him and have a little army on display. Or maybe I'll end up redesigning him before I get to that point. But either way, I'll see you next time.